imagine we've all been watching the events unfolding in America and then also rippling out to many other countries, including our own, as people have sought to protest for justice for people of colour. And we're not immune from that. It looks very different. I think sometimes the transposition from one country to another can sort of feel like it's exactly the same kind of thing, and I don't know that it necessarily is, that race relationships in the United States and our challenges around reconciliation with our Indigenous brothers and sisters aren't easily equated, I don't think. And yet at the same time, there's something here that I think we need to pay attention to from the perspective of faith. I think on the one hand, there's something that we need to pay attention to when people are so unhappy that they'll risk put the kind of risks and needs of others into jeopardy around COVID-19 in order to protest. We need to think about how unhappy, how deeply angered and distressed people are when faced with something like that. At the same time, it seems to me, particularly here in Australia, that to have joined in mass protests at this time seems to me to be deeply unwise. But it would be a mistake to dismiss the issue then because people have made those sorts of decisions, and to say that while we might find the timing of that to be problematic in the light of what we're going through, to recognise that to sort of dismiss an issue there, to recognise it, or to say there's no problem, is also to be, I think, too easy in our response. It's interesting that today we have the Beatitudes, which ask us, I think, in Jesus' teaching, this fundamental part of his message to us, to hold various things together, things that are not easily held together. And when we think about the situation that's been described, and also I should footnote that too by saying that to say that there aren't people who've taken advantage of this situation, both in the United States and here, I think would also be naive. But the gospel today invites us to hold together some difficult things in relation to something like this. For example, happy are those who hunger and thirst for what is right, for they shall be satisfied. There's no question that here in Australia, Black Deaths in custody is a blight and a stain upon our country. The fact that we could have a Royal Commission and some 20 years later, I think there's still 430 deaths of Aboriginal people who've died while in prison, to me seems to be something that cries out to heaven for justice. At the same time, to hold that with those where Jesus also says, happy are those who are peacemakers. A violent demonstration can never be in the way of Jesus. Happy the merciful, for they shall have mercy shown them. How do we practice mercy in the light of this situation, particularly when people are making choices that we might find difficult? Happy are those who mourn, and they shall be comforted. The gospel today invites us to really try and put the eyes of faith on a very difficult question, something that would have us with reactions and responses in all sorts of ways, I think. But it seems to me that we need to hold in tension the care and the need of all in this situation, to recognise that people's lives of colour matter deeply, and the systematic injustice that has brought about some of these situations needs to be addressed. It needs to be something that as Christians that we are passionately committed to working towards. At the same time, to recognise that people's safety is at issue in a situation like this in the face of the pandemic that we're still in the middle of, also seems to me to be something that we should be considering. As people of faith, as we gather for prayer today, as we gather for Eucharist, I think to bring the cry, those mothers who weep for their children, who've suffered and died at the hands of all sorts of government systems, whether that's the police or others, and the underlying racism that underpins all that is something that we must respond to as Christians. But to do it in the right way, and to do it as people of faith, as peacemakers, also seems to be, to me, to walk in the way of Jesus.